There we go. Now we're live.
Nobody swear.
Well, we do have a code of conduct for HangOps, and that does apply to this space as well. But I don't think that swearing is verboten necessarily. But
No,
you know,
I don't think it is.
but
Within reason.
let's be professional. We've got the Cry Party channel for that.
Yeah, exactly. It's the only channel I'm active in. Like, that's where all the interesting stuff is.
It often
And
is.
Wordle. So I don't think I've ever asked Joshua, what does your company do?
Alma is a Slack-based workflow tool.
Okay, nice.
We have an incident management workflow currently, and we're actually working on developing other workflows for. I would think we have a few that have been released recently.
Okay, nice. Yeah, the
Yeah,
chat ops stuff is really interesting angle. I
yeah,
think we've really seen it take off the past two
yeah.
years, maybe.
Yeah, it really has. And Slack is a pretty great API for it. So it works out pretty well. And with more and more companies being fully remote or, emphasizing remote work, Slack has become such a, you know, popular method for people to communicate. So
Yeah.
it's a pretty natural fit in the modern era. So yeah, I remember using Hubot way back in the day on
Yeah, right.
I think we were using that on HipChat,
Yeah.
and there
Yeah, it's
was something with Basecamp. I think there was something else that was
yeah.
out there, but I don't remember. Like that is
I've
lost
I've wiped
lost
Basecamp from
memories.
my memory.
Yeah, I remember the Vuvuzela was a thing for the like you could play a Vuvuzela sound in there, um, and also I learned what a Vuvuzela was because of that.
Yeah, it seems like a really natural. I mean, I worked at a startup previously, and we used to use Slack for kind of surfacing people using our product.
Mhm.
So we were a queuing system. So we actually got a Slack notification every time someone joined a queue or someone was seated at a restaurant, because it was such a quick way of surfacing information to non-technical people in the company. You know, you don't have to build a UI. You just hit the API, and then
Mhm.
there's some piece of information that the non-technical guys at the company can talk about in a thread or whatever. Yeah, it worked pretty neat actually. It's pretty one of my favorite APIs I worked with, especially with the block stuff and building up that sort of
Yeah,
stuff. It's
and
pretty
we'll
neat.
have the ability for people to create their own workflows and that sort of thing at some point. But right now, yeah, it's mostly around incident management because that's just a really
It's a good place to start.
it's a good place to start. Everybody has a need for it. There's a lot of best practices that are kind of scattered all over as far as people's knowledge. We encounter a lot of companies that don't even have a real incident management process. They just kind of fly by the seat of their pants, and so Alma helps them have that structure. And so yeah, we're looking forward to having some of the other workflows take off as well. We have one around one brewing around like migrating legacy applications to
Okay.
Kubernetes. Like that'll be an interesting one
That's a
to
really
implement.
interesting. It's not
Yeah,
what I would expect.
yeah. So a little bit of a teaser there, but we'll have some stuff on our new blog about that and ways for people to be able to integrate that into their Alma application. I'm surprised. There's some regulars that we're not seeing
Yeah, it's
today.
surprisingly quiet. This is
Yeah.
I've never joined this been this quiet. Whether it's because like the announcement went out like 5 minutes beforehand.
Oh, did it go at the wrong
Maybe
time?
I don't know. I just think,
I use a scheduled tweet thing to tweet about it,
oh, do we
and
tweet about it as well? I
yeah,
didn't even know
I
there was
posted
a
it in announcements. Like it's a standing thing, but I'm not gonna do the logistics of having all 12,180 people in HangOps Slack get get on an email
yeah,
list.
definitely that yeah, nobody wants that.
Yeah. Um, reply all, please remove me from this thread. I had a an amusing time with that, watching that happen in when I worked at IBM. Somebody sent an email to the entire company,
Wow.
340,000 people.
Bet the mail servers
The
were busy that day.
oh the so yeah, IBM uses Lotus Notes and Domino, or they did in 2006, 2003, something like that. And the Domino admins disabled the ability for people to send like in minutes. There was like, I don't know, I had like 400 emails in my inbox within like a minute of please remove me from this list. It's like you can't get removed from the entire
Yeah.
global company
You can't opt
directory
out. Yeah.
because it's all LDAP based. So there was an all employee LDAP list.
Ooh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And they changed it, I think, to like only certain people could send to that, like the CEO and that kind of thing. It was highly amusing. And of course there's been other distillist snafus like that. Everybody has an
Happens
experience with.
anytime someone has a distribution lift, it's
Yeah.
quickly becomes arguing over whether it was a reasonable email or reply
Yeah.
to send. I'm in a
Yeah.
couple of the outages ones, and they always quickly devolve into, guys, please stop saying that you're also experiencing this outage. We know all of Google is down.
Right. Or last fall, with the AWS US East 1 outage, like
Yeah.
everybody knew about that. So where are you at? What are you working on?
So I mostly work in Golang doing quite sort of opsy stuff for the company I'm at the moment, but building. So the last thing I worked on was a Kubernetes platform as a service. We're a hosting provider that's sort of like branching out into offering a cloud platform now.
Okay.
But very sort of like small businesses. We have an enterprise team that basically uses our cloud platform to develop bespoke solutions for companies and stuff. So I joined this company kind of as the first Go engineer, or rather to kind of bring Go knowledge into the company. So I spend a fair bit of time tutoring other engineers, mostly Ruby engineers, how to get on with Golang.
Okay.
And
Very
if you
cool.
ever heard of something called cPanel,
Yeah, I'm familiar with
yeah,
cPanel.
yeah. So obviously that's what most of the shared hosting industry is using at the moment.
Yeah.
We're currently one of the things I'm working on at the moment is basically a replacement for that. So that's the core of that's in Ruby. I'm not touching that, but the bit that's actually going to run on the dedicated machines that are going to serve customer sites is all written in Golang.
Hmm.
And we've sort of modeled it off how Kubernetes works. So you have all these nodes and they sort of reconcile off specs and stuff. So it's quite an interesting project.
Mhm.
It's fully remote, which is what I like because I hate commuting. It's
Yes.
also like the largest company I've ever worked for. I've always worked for really small startups ever since I
Mhm.
started working a couple of years ago. And this is the first time I've joined a company where it's not the rush to the next round of funding, or so it's quite a nice step back with the pace. We have an ops team that's not just me. It's like, yeah, pretty good.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's always wonderful to not be the sole ops person and the sole on call, because that is
Yeah,
just misery inducing, especially for a hosting provider. There's all kinds of random tickets are going to be coming in from
yeah,
customers, I'm sure.
it's it's an onslaught. But fortunately, there's basically a completely different team that looks after ops, which is pretty good. It's what we like. So your role, are you mostly like community engagement, or are you software
Yeah,
engineering, or
I'm head of advocacy and community is my title, but I have a 20 plus year career
yeah?
in operations, systems administration, DevOps. I worked for Chef for the entirety of that company's
Oh,
existence.
nice. Okay,
So I've
cool.
I've done all the Ruby development you can shake a stick at in terms of like ops and DevOps type stuff. Um, I'm gonna die on the hill that it's still systems administration, and it always was.
Yeah. No, I'll agree with that.
Like they're systems and they need to be administered. And like writing automation tooling is literally in every book that's been written on the subject.
Yeah, no, yeah, 100%. I think it's not, people talk about DevOps and all this stuff as such a novel concept, but guys who've
Well,
been looking after farms of hundreds of Linux machines have been writing bash scripts to automate stuff for donkey's years now.
right, yeah, and it's DevOps isn't a new concept, but the movement really brought awareness to a lot of companies around the need to have developers and operations folks working
Yeah,
together instead of
silos.
developers,
Yeah.
developers throw the code over the wall and then they go off to the pub and then the operators have to spend the entire weekend trying to get it deployed into production, right? Like that was the
Yeah.
classic example that was given for years, and there are still companies that still haven't got on board with this
Well,
idea,
that's
and they've created new silos where they've got developers and operations, and
and
then they
then
have the
DevOps.
DevOps, then they have SRE, which is a different silo, and like they're they keep these
Yeah.
reporting structures and chains all in separate departments, and at the end of the day, like we are all working at the same company, we should be working
Yeah.
together.
Well, it's quite interesting you sort of mentioned that because so every previous company I've worked at, I've kind of been DevOps advocacy, or I've been mostly an engineer and I've handled the ops and cloud stuff as well. So sort of
Mm-hmm.
DevOps. But this again is the first time I worked for. We have an ops team, and that you talk about that methodology of throwing software over the fence. That
Mm-hmm.
is sort of what's going on here. We basically the software team at this company has only existed for a year. The company's been around for about 20 years as a hosting company. So the ops team are well acquainted with we have a farm of servers, we have shared hosting, we sell virtual machines. And then the past year, we've started developing this cloud platform as basically this entirely invented and hired in team. Um, so there's still some way to go in terms of how we communicate with our ops functionality in the team and we move towards some sort of synergy.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's obviously quite weird because we have that large shared hosting element of the company that at the moment is off the shelf software. There's no need for us in engineering necessarily to be involved with that. But as we move towards our bespoke product replacing that, I think we'll see more of that cohesion of the two teams and moving to us deploying stuff.
Yeah. And I posted on Twitter the other day that I think that a lot of companies are not doing stuff right, but I'm not in a position to like
Mm.
affect the industry that way. I'll try and build community here at Alma, and see where we can go with developing workflows that really bring teams together and help them
Yeah,
collaborate better.
I think the good thing with the workflows is it seems like it can provide a really good framework for people who don't have the processes in their company.
Yeah.
You want to start doing nice incident response, but actually the first time you have to deal with an incident, number one, it's terrifying. And all of a sudden, everything you were planning goes out the book. Whereas when you've got kind of a framework like what you guys are providing,
Mm-hmm.
sort of pushes people in the right direction towards
Yeah.
those best practices. I think that's something a lot of people didn't see coming with the ChatOps stuff. It's sort of thing. It's this tool, but it's not. It's a framework to work within. I think
Mm-hmm.
could be interesting. We could get more people going towards this realm that we like.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Hey, Joe. Glad you could join us.
Hi, everyone. Oh, video's out again.
It's a quiet one today.
Yeah, quiet for you all maybe, but they're doing street work over here. So every so often I get to hear them jackhammering
Oh gosh.
or whatever. And of course I'm wondering, like, I wonder where my fiber is. Is it buried in the street?
Yeah.
Is it in the alley behind my house? I have no
Yeah.
idea.
Wait, whereabouts are you? Are you in
I'm
Boulder?
in Denver,
Oh,
over
Denver.
by DU and
Okay.
Observatory Park.
Got it. Yeah, I'm up in Westminster, so
Yeah.
there, and I'm in a quiet subdivision neighborhood, so there's rarely any street noise or anything like that, fortunately.
Well, Denver Water apparently has 10,000 plus houses that have lead
Wow.
in their water.
That's not something that should be in water.
No, it's not. They sent me a Brita filter, and they keep sending me a Brita pitcher, I should say, and they keep sending me filters for it. But the email announcing all this said basically it's going to take us 10 years to replace all the connections, which when it's 10,000 homes, I can understand why. The
Mm-hmm.
frustration for me is that according to their plan, they're doing half of my block and they're stopping like 3 houses away from ours.
Oh, geez.
So I got to experience the joy of finding the right special filter for my Samsung fridge um, that filters out the lead,
Hmm.
and that introduced me to the annoyance that Samsung has like a half a dozen different water filters that are all basically the same size, and the only thing that changes on them is the little keying on the neck so that you can't put the wrong filter into your fridge. But it's like, if you have a 4-inch filter unit, why do
Hmm.
you have more than one of them? It seems that it would be cheaper for them to not have to have multiple SKUs for this. And
Oh, they gotta create value by creating a new filter.
well, I mean,
Uh,
even if I still had to buy a Samsung filter, you would expect that it's cheaper for Samsung to only stock one of these parts
mhm.
rather than 8 or 10 or whatever.
Right.
I went through three on Amazon before I found one that actually fit. And the
Wow.
annoying thing is they look exactly the same
Yep.
except
Just
for
this key.
that
Yeah.
little keying
Yeah,
bit
I
of,
I had a Samsung fridge with the filtered water thing, and um in a couple of different houses I've had, and it's always annoying to have to replace those. Trying to figure out because they're always different. The fridge I have now um doesn't have a water dispenser. It does have an ice maker, and we have actually a whole house water filter and softener system.
yeah,
So we have the filtered water comes out of a tap next to the sink, and then they also ran a line that went straight into the fridge. So
yeah.
no matter what fridge we get, we don't have to worry about a filter for it because it's already going to be filtered water when it comes in anyway.
Yeah, I'm also experiencing the joy of the Samsung ice maker, where a little tiny part that's basically a spring wrapped around a little peg of
Hmm.
plastic
Yep.
fell out into my cup one day when I was getting ice.
Hmm.
And the ice maker stopped dispensing.
Amazing.
And when I called several different repair places, and they all basically said, yeah, the you have to replace the entire ice maker assembly. You can't replace individual parts. So this part, which looks like it maybe cost Samsung a penny, if if that,
Hmm.
means that I have to go and spend $450,
Yep.
because not only is there the part, there's the quote 2 hours to 2.5 hours of labor to
Hmm.
get the door disassembled to the point where you can get the thing out. So we're doing a remodel hopefully in April of our kitchen, and we're getting a new fridge. It will not be a Samsung, I can tell you that much.
Yeah, we got an LG that has it's counter depth, so it takes up way less space than the old fridge, but it also, of course, has less storage. But because it doesn't have the indoor water dispenser and ice maker thing, it doesn't have all that assembly. The ice
Yeah,
maker is actually in the freezer and uh, makes ice and doesn't like so it's new, right? We bought it like a year ago, so it's not not going to have crapped out yet, but we'll see. We'll see what happens when that time comes.
yeah. We're like buying bags of ice because we don't use that much anyway. It's
Mhm.
just the irritation, because it's like I look at this with engineer eyes and I'm like, really, seriously?
Yeah. It's the like the concept. It's just like, come on, guys. Like, we're living in a society where we're running out of natural resources and we're just throwing stuff away because you can't repair it. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like, even if even getting past that, it really should be as simple as connecting one water feed into the unit and like 4 screws to hold it to the door, and then an electrical connection. It shouldn't be a million screws to get this thing out,
mm,
especially if they're going to say like, oh, it's a modular thing and you can't do any repair on it. Then why are they not making it easy to swap the module out?
Yep.
Yeah, it's so it has a future life as a garage fridge.
Yes. Where you don't need
um
ice,
where
or an
and
or a water dispenser.
yeah, so for the holidays and all that. But it's just like so many things in tech, you look at them and you just get so irritated because it's like, okay, I'm spending like 10 seconds of mental effort and I've designed a better product than a better system than the whole engineering team. So I have to think that there's some kind of thing I'm overlooking, but like a module that makes ice, when it's completely self-contained, should really only have water going in, electric going in, I guess some data lines to connect to the buttons. But this should not be a multi-hour labor thing.
Yeah. Well, and when we were shopping for our fridge, we saw all these ones that had like the tablet thing in the doors, and I don't know why a refrigerator needs to connect to
It's
the
like great.
internet.
What I really want is a fridge that needs firmware updates.
No,
Yeah.
no,
You sure your
don't need
fridge
that.
doesn't need to be vulnerable? Like,
I don't need Log4j on my fridge.
I don't want firmware updates on my fridge. I don't want my fridge connecting to my Wi-Fi.
Nope.
I mean, of course, I've like gone on I'm part of the home improvement board collective, and I'm using Unify gear, so I have a separate Wi-Fi that does not get the privilege of speaking to the internet that all my IoT devices are on.
Yeah.
And I say that, and there's really right now there are only two IoT devices. It's the it's the Home Assistant controller and my garage door controller. All my other IoT stuff is Z-Wave and Zigbee, because I'm like,
nice.
I don't want you to brick just because some startup or decided like, hey, we've decided we're going to change the terms and now you need to pay a subscription to use us. And then there's the other aspect of, thanks, but I really don't want to have 8 different phone apps for the 8 different IoT devices that I have.
And just imagine, you didn't pay your subscription fee, so now your fridge won't unlock and you can't get your milk out or whatever.
Or my garage door won't open.
Or your garage door won't open, yeah. Yeah, that'd be awful. I've got old-fashioned
so my only rule is
Coleman garage door openers.
Is things are not, any IoT device that I buy is not allowed to require an internet server, even for setup. Even if it's only for like, oh, it talks to it and then it gets a configuration packet and then you're done, because I don't want to deal with like, oh, 2 years from now I need to reconfigure it because whatever reason, and the company has gone out of business or shut down this product line, and now I have an expensive brick. So yeah,
technology.
Yeah, it's like I do like the Wi-Fi devices that talk MQTT, because then at least you can you can scrape the MQTT bus and you can see what, and basically by the time they're doing MQTT, they actually document everything. Like my garage door opener is, some guy makes it himself, and I can tell because the enclosure was 3D printed.
Right. Okay.
But like you can go to GitHub and get the source code for the firmware, and it talks MQTT, and I'm able to scrape it by talking. I can scrape its state, and I have so that when my garage door opens, the light comes on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just literally deleted a spam message in my personal inbox this morning for doorbell integration with some IoT thing.
Yeah, I'm like, I just want ADT. Yeah, I'm like, I just want the Z-Wave and the Zigbee. And of course, being a geek and being and all that, I now maintain a GitHub repo with a list of devices that works with Home Assistant to go along with my Zish plugins list, because it's like, okay, once I started using Zish, I'm like, okay, now I'm exploring the different frameworks, and the next thing I knew, I had my notes were like, well, if I just make this a GitHub, it was all marked down anyway, so now it's like 7 years in.
That's quite a time of collecting devices.
Well, no, not the devices one. That the Zish plugins is years old, and like the devices one, you can actually find the link to it on the HangOps home infrastructure. And like the one thing in the contributing and the PR template is like you must have used this device before adding it, because a lot of devices claim they work, but not so much.
Yeah,
So
I'm yet to get into the smart home adventure. I don't know where to start. Like I'm thinking start with lights because that seems like
start.
the most sensible place to start. But
I actually went with light switches instead of lights,
okay,
because this way, normal humans can still turn the lights on and off
yeah,
without having to get download apps for their phone.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
it's a safety thing as well, isn't it? Really. I mean, the last thing you want is not being able to turn on your lights and stumbling around your room in pitch black.
yeah,
or
and
or wake up your partner or other people in your house with talking to your devices to turn them on.
Yeah,
well, that's a whole other neurosis thing of mine. Like I don't have any of she who must not be named or the Google thing or or any of that in the house, because my wife works in security, and she and I both agree that no, we really don't want things listening to us and sending their data off to the cloud for processing. Thank you.
yeah. I mean, I don't really like voice control as a mechanism of interacting with anything. It just doesn't seem. I mean, I've got this on my wrist constantly for stop, start, music, whatever. I always carry my phone. I'm usually sat at my desk. Like,
Yeah.
I have zero interest in talking to any virtual thing to
Up
get
I
up
anything
don't even
done.
like talking
until
on my phone.
yeah, like up
Yeah.
until recently, Siri was not recognizing my voice very well. And I don't, and it's not like I have an odd accent or weird pitch, I think, but I just could not get Siri to work worth a crap. And then like the most, I guess about 4 months ago or 5 months ago, the watch update finally got Siri to recognize my voice.
Oh, okay.
And because I was visiting my parents, and my brother was using his watch for cooking timing, and I was like, okay, it's really nice to be able to set multiple timers without having to touch anything if your hands are already like greasy, or
Yeah, right.
like you've been like making hamburgers, and it's like, okay, I really don't want to get burger meat all over everything. And it finally started working, so I've been using it for that. But I trust Apple more on this, because Apple makes their money by selling devices rather than by selling my
Data.
eyeballs.
Yeah.
So um, I might consider getting like some kind of Siri integration to Home Assistant, but it's not super high priority. And most of my automations are stuff like, okay, at sundown, turn this particular light on for a couple hours. If I detect motion in the basement, turn on the basement light. You know, um, I don't actually care that much about being able to command the house to turn off the lights in the kitchen. And the other thing is all the lights get shut off automatically, whatever state they're in at midnight. So if I forget to turn off a light, I know that it's not going to be on all night.
Yeah, right.
But in my copious free time backlog is finding something where the voice recognition is completely self-contained on a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what stage you're at really with the amount of processing power that decent voice recognition takes. I imagine it must have reduced significantly, the amount of
Yeah,
processor required.
I
But
imagine like the training probably takes tons and tons of CPU, but actually using an already trained
yeah,
system seems like it would be something. Um,
yeah, I mean, they must have solved it because there's no way if it took lots of processing
might-
power, they'd be doing it,
on your watch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like the watch doesn't have a whole lot of CPU.
Yeah, I
Although
remember
it is kind of shocking how much CPU you can get for $90 right now.
Yeah, it's
true.
getting impressive.
I mean,
I remember in the 90s when, what was it, Dragon Naturally Speaking was that the product that was really
Yep.
popular.
Yeah.
That one had a lot of processing requirements, and my Pentium Celeron, I think it was, couldn't run anything with it.
Yeah. Now, like the brick servers I'm running for my distributed file system in the basement cluster are $75 Droid HT2s, and they have 2 gigs of memory and hexacore. Like I have this project of like, I really need to get K3S running on all the ARM boards in my basement, because it's kind of embarrassing that I have 30 something cores that are just sitting around
Yeah, right.
not doing anything, and 40 gigs of RAM, and
I am delightfully ignorant of all of those specifications about my computers these days. Like I didn't build my own gaming system last year or year before. I paid somebody to do it. It was delightful. I was like, go with that one. That looks cool. I know that I needed a 2080 GPU. That was it. That was like, and some amount of memory. Like I think I went pretty much with the default to whatever thing that looked cool on CyberPower's site.
The longer I've worked with,
rub money on that problem.
Yeah. The longer I've worked in backends and cloud, the less I've started to give a fuck about the specs of anything. I used to build all my own machines and mess about with all that, and now it's just like, yeah, especially if someone else is paying, if the company's paying, it's like, yeah, I'll just have a top spec MacBook, please. I'm not even going to think twice about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to look up what this MacBook is running. I got a 2019 model when I started here because the newer ones weren't out yet. And it's apparently an 8-core i9.
Yeah, pretty the same. 60. Have you got the 16-inch one?
Yeah, 16-inch.
Yeah.
It only has 16 gigs of memory. I did remember that because that can be a constraint with Zoom and Slack and other Electron things.
Zoom, Slack, and Docker are not. Do not.
I'm not using Docker.
Okay. Well, even just containerd and nerdctl.
I'm not using any of that stuff.
Doing everything.
My job involves being in Zoom and Slack and having 40 browser tabs open. Most of the browser tabs are Zoom join windows.
I was gonna say only 40.
Yeah,
that's just Firefox. I also have Chrome. That's where all the Google Docs stuff is, because
I have a 2019 personal that's similar spec to yours, and then my job I just started sent me one of the M1 13-inch, and it's like such a difference. This thing is so nice, and it's not even the new M1 Pros or anything like that. It's the previous generation. Like I run iStat menus, and even driving the external 34-inch monitor, so like I assume the GPU cores are grinding. It's running 99 Fahrenheit right now. When I connect my Intel box, let me wake it up to see, but I think it runs at around 150 without an external monitor.
Wow.
Yeah. And like, I have never heard the fans go off on this M1 laptop, even when I'm running QEMU with a VM in it, and
I mean,
and even running
Zoom,
like an x86 VM, and not so that it's actually like doing real work on the emulation. Nothing. It does spike up about 25 degrees, but still, it's not hot enough.
That's cold.
That the fans even kick in.
Yeah, I'm hoping I'm going to get one new M1s this summer, maybe, because last summer my laptop just slow to a halt, and my boss heard me shouting and swearing over TeamSpeak and was like, "Yeah, we'll get you on the new M1s before next summer because I can't deal with this for another year."
And because working from home like everybody else, the thing's been sitting on my desk, so I haven't really had a chance to
Hi, Mary.
explore the battery.
Heard voices I knew.
Hello.
Hi, bye.
Cameo by.
Excellent.
But my dad just got the M1 Pro 16-inch, and he says that, oh yeah, I ran it for 10 hours
On battery?
on battery.
Yep.
That's
And
insane.
all dad does is watch videos all day.
Yeah.
It's so
I'm-
ridiculous.
We were up in Reno 2 weeks ago. It doesn't matter when. But I got the 14-inch M1 Pro in the fall, and yeah, we were at a buddy's house. Mary had taken over his desk because he was away, and so I was stuck on the couch. But on somebody else's living room, blah blah blah. And I just like, if I don't have to, I'm not going to go figuring out the wiring and blah blah blah. So all week I worked on the couch, full days, and like plugged in my laptop at night. Like literally didn't have to think about power, like entire work days with the thing. It's a beast. It's an absolute beast.
I've never gotten more than 3
Is-
hours out of my Intel laptop.
Is that the M1 Max or the Pro?
The Pro. The Pro.
Is the Max even better?
The Max pretty much just has more GPU cores and lets you have 64 gigs instead of 32, but it wasn't worth the like $2,000 upgrade charge or something like that. Or maybe it's gonna be $2,000 with the extra RAM. I don't know. It took it from like a stupidly expensive laptop to an absurdly expensive laptop. And I was just like, I can't realistically justify this for my workloads. And we're not that big of a company. So
Yeah.
I've
I may or
been
may not
thinking-
be on the store page right now. I'm not going to impulse buy on this. Though,
Yeah.
because-
I think for my next one, I'm probably going to go for one of the smaller ones because most recently I've been doing all my work on VS Code Remote and just having a heavy ass virtual machine. So a lot of stuff I'm doing at the moment with containers is so awkward to do on Mac, just kind of directly interacting with Containerd. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll set up a Linux VM and try out this new VS Code Remote thing everyone's been going on about. And since I've started doing it, I'm like, yeah, this is just so much better because I've got the convenience of my Mac with the power of Linux, and also I work for a service provider. I can stick myself a 64 core VM with 128 gigs of RAM, and it doesn't cost me anything. It doesn't cost us anything. So it just got this powerful ass VM, and it's just fantastic. And so that's what's got me thinking. If I'm always going to be working from home and always have good internet connection, I might as well just get a MacBook Air or something that's super light, small. Yeah, I've been enjoying this workflow.
it's supposed to be coming out with an M2 version this year sometime. So
Yeah.
wait for
Yeah.
those.
I'll wait then.
Yeah,
My impulse
supposedly
purchase.
they're updating. They're going to have an M series Airbook at some point
Okay,
this year.
nice.
So, although honestly, this 13-inch MacBook Pro is not all that heavy, and I'd rather have a few extra ports myself.
Yeah, that's the ports that I'm worried about.
Yeah.
That I don't. I mean, I've used MacBook Airs as I had one for my personal laptop for several years, and it's a nice form factor, but again, there aren't enough ports, and for my personal stuff, I want to be able to like plug in a SD card from a camera, and then it's like, yeah, you could get a dock. And it's like, okay, so now I have the dock, so I have all the inconvenience of the dock and the weight of a MacBook Pro, but I don't have the convenience of having just everything in one device.
Yeah.
Plus, I like to delude myself that I actually need all that extra horsepower. But when I'm doing stuff in Docker, or I shouldn't say, I reflexively say Docker, but really I'm switching to Lima and
Oh, okay.
and running or Colima and doing everything with nerdctl and all that, because
Fuck Docker and their recent changes to all of the
yeah,
licensing.
yeah. And like, sure, I could do it on my personal machine, and honestly, I still have it on my personal one because I have yet to take the time to figure out how to get BuildX working on
Yeah.
And I build all my, because I have the basement rack with a bunch of ARM boards in it. I'm building all my personal containers as ARM7, ARM64, and Intel. And like, that's super easy to do with BuildX. It's a one-liner in BuildX, and it just does it all in parallel and makes the unified image for you, which is great. Because I don't like having to have different Docker compose files based on what machine it is. That way lies madness.
Yeah.
And it's just super easy to do it with BuildX. And I just started a new job on the 10th, so I really don't have time to mess around with figuring out how to do this without Docker, when Docker is not a thing that I'm working on at work. So
yeah, I haven't had to worry about Docker in a while. So I did do some, so I worked at a company called Sim for a few months last year. Unfortunately was let go from there, but the developer workstation setup stuff was all a Docker Compose orchestration thing. And they were not running the app on Kubernetes. I think they were using a serverless thing. So Docker was just the lightest weight way to run the app. It was a Python Django thing. So that was my last real experience doing anything with Docker. So it was before the licensing updates. Haven't had to worry about any of that.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the other options that are competing with Docker now are also just better in other ways. Just a weird stuff. I've been using Podman a lot recently, and that's quite nice because it gives you your concept of Kubernetes pods. You can have multiple containers very easily showing a networking namespace, which is an option in Docker, I believe, but it's just Podman handles that quite nicely, and you can like even load up like a Kubernetes pod manifest and just run that on your local machine. So they're doing lots of stuff that Docker can't do. And licensing stuff aside, I don't really like the direction Docker's taking with a lot of stuff. So it sort of makes sense to slowly move away from it.
A try.
It's a little bit rough around the edges. It's a Red Hat project. And in places it's been quite frustrating to work with, but in other places it's been like, oh, that's really thoughtful. Like that's a really nice feature. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm moving my Home Assistant to so that all the devices have their state reported on MQTT topics, so that I can then, and that it listens on MQTT topics to toggle various device switches. The idea being that this way I can write automations in a real language that runs in a container that just watches one input topic and writes to an output topic, rather than the joy of, oh look, we're programming logic in YAML,
in blocks or in YAML or in anything crazy.
It's YAML. YAML is what Home Assistant uses for all that. And that's fine when you have minimal things where it's like, okay, when this sensor kicks off, I'm starting a 10-minute timer on the lights, and so that every time a motion is detected outside, my lights will stay on for 10 more minutes after the last, on my patio. But once you start getting into like, well, I want to do I want this motion sensor or this state file, it's like, yeah,
too much.
I am not interested in that.
Does Home Assistant just have something built in for publishing to MQTT, or is that?
Yeah. You can
nice.
you can define like a state sensor as a little YAML thing that basically what you're defining is what topic to look at and what values mean on and off. So you're not stuck with like, oh, it has to be true or false. So it's like whatever.
Yep.
If your device is reporting its status in Russian, doesn't matter. As long as you can determine what the value is, you can turn that into a binary state, and then Home Assistant will just treat that like any other sensor. So yeah, it's pretty easy, and for that level of thing, I'm perfectly fine with YAML. It's just when you start trying to crowbar logic into it that it's like, yeah, I already have to deal with Ansible for work, and I really don't want to. I really don't enjoy that part of Ansible.
Yeah.
So not going to inflict that on myself, at home. So I want to actually try using OpenFast.
Okay.
That function has it's a it's a Lambda equivalent, but open source. So I feel like, okay, functions, being able to run a function based on an MQTT topic is exactly what I want to do. So, but new job, I'm spending all my brain time on like learning things about the new job. I don't really have time to monkey around with this.
Yeah, take the back seat for a bit on the old home projects.
Yeah, but that's the plan.
Right. I'm gonna head off because I need to like make dinner and stuff.
Yeah, I gotta run too.
My power just died or something. But I'll see you guys around.
All right.
I gotta run too. Bye all.
See you in the Slack.
Yep. See you Friday afternoon.
Yes. Yeah, we'll have the happy hour HangOps on Friday.
That's it. 3 Pacific?
Time zones.
It's 2 o'clock your time?
4
o'clock your time. Okay, so
Yeah.
3 here.
Yeah, three over there. Yeah, and 6 over there. Whichever way is east to the direction of where I'm facing. Maybe it's that way. I don't know.
Okay.
And if you have mirrored video and all that, like, who knows? We're all virtual. Time is a construct anyway.
Lunchtime, Beverly, so.
Lunchtime also a construct.
Yeah. / an illusion.
Right.
Oh, what else is going on?
We still have our Christmas tree up. Because
Cool.
that's just how we roll around here.
Hey, if it's still bringing you joy,
Yeah.
then don't condo that shit.
It does bring me joy. We got this tree topper that like has LEDs that like do a spiral pattern around the ceiling, and we have a vaulted ceiling in that room, so it's pretty
That's
cool.
just fancy.
Yeah. I'm not gonna point the camera that way. There's an embarrassment of shoes and whatnot.
If you want to take a more cropped video and post it somewhere later,
Right? Yeah. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll just get like I'll bust out my skills of a video editor.
We were so gone for so much of December this year that we didn't bother with a tree, which is saved us a lot of hassle, which is nice. But like we've got a weeping angel tree topper, which is just delightful.
Of course, yes.
You can do that, but
The Doctor Who one, Weeping Angels. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You want an angel on the tree? Okay. It's going to be a weeping angel.
Perfect.
Unfortunately, Mary's is as big a Who fan as I am, so she was like, "Yes, like, cool." I'm actually a little surprised at how emphatic you are about that, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it worked out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're probably gonna take down the Christmas decorations this weekend. It's about time.
Yeah, the few things that we have came down last weekend, so
yeah, we have winter decorations that will stay up though, because it is winter, and then we might keep them up until second winter, because we have that, because we have fall spring in here in Colorado. the second winter, fall, spring. There's a whole chart that like maps them out, like the Hobbit eating times. It's really quite
That's
amazing.
fantastic. Well, and you all have like a foot of snow, and then the next day it's like 75, and the snow is gone. In fact, it's dry.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. We got like, I don't know, like several inches of snow fell here yesterday. And today it's sunny. You can see the sun coming in. My office window is south facing, but we have a next door neighbor, of course, because subdivisions, and their house blocks most of the sun, but there's a corner of the window where it's just pouring in. My desk is illuminated.
so you get a little light. That's good. Yeah,
And this is why I don't use Discord dark mode, because I can't read anything with this much light coming in, and it's not like I can like put blackout curtains in here. I have plants, and like plants like light.
yeah. I only get the sun for like the blasting sun for a couple hours early on, and I start on the later side, so it's not too bad. But we've got plastic up over the windows because although yes, we are in San Francisco, and no, it doesn't get that cold. It does get cold enough that the whole like, oh, we're temperate, we don't need insulation in our walls thing comes and gets us. And like, you know what? 50 is fucking cold if you don't have any insulation.
Yeah. Yeah, that gets downright chilly real quick.
So trying to preserve whatever heat I do get on this end of the house from the goodness knows how old. I mean, I think this house was built in the 20s, and I think
it is the 20s.
So
oh, you mean the 20s 100 years ago?
1920s, yeah. So like the furnace has been upgraded, but the ducting I don't think has, and so like it's just this trickle of air by the time it gets to this end of the house. And
have you had your ducts cleaned?
I have no idea. We rent.
Oh yeah.
Given the state of other things here, I'm probably gonna say no. We went to that thing in the desert a couple of weeks after we moved in, and we came back and we were trying to clean it up, all the dust off of stuff. And we're like still not really familiar with the place yet, and blah, blah, blah. And it's a 2-story, the landlord lives upstairs. So it's, there's a shed and there's things well appointed, but we couldn't find a freaking hose. And so we're looking, it's like, hey, do you have anything? He's like, oh, I'll pick something up while I'm out. Okay, cool. And then we looked a little bit more, and we found a coiled up hose under the back stairs, like down where creatures fear to tread, because it's who knows what the hell's growing under there or lurking under there. But anyway, we found one, and we were like, hey, it's okay. We found a hose. He goes, really? Down there? Wow. Yeah, that must have been there from before I inherited the place from my grandmother. But cool, great, awesome. Hope it's still good. We're like, okay, cool. How long must that be then? Was he been here 10 years, something like that? Dude inherited the place in 1986. There was a hose under the stairs for the last however many years that is. 35 years.
Yeah. That's an old hose, I suppose.
But just that, like, it's been there since 1986 and he never knew it existed.
Right.
I don't think our ducts have been cleaned.
No, probably not. No. Cleaning the ducts would probably help some of that airflow, though, if it's a house that's been around since the 20s of last century.
Yeah.
Not the current 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a condo that we lived in before we moved to this house, and had the ducts cleaned in that. It cost like $400, I think, maybe $600, something like that. And my wife has allergies, and she stopped having allergic reactions. And after the ducts were cleaned, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
well worth doing. And they also cleaned like the AC cooler return filter thing. Like like there was a screen that he opened it up, and like all this just dirt fell out because there's just so much dust buildup on it.
Oh, geez.
So yeah, so cleaning those things is pretty important.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if our return, I know our return, the one return that I know of is just a big grate down a shaft. And so I know there's no filter there, but there might be something closer to the furnace. I don't know, but we'll see.
Yeah, that reminds me, I need to change my furnace filter.
Efficiency.
Yeah. We were in this house after or before the wildfires were pretty rampant, what, last year before? And I think we changed the furnace filter monthly during that. And it was like legit, those filters were filthy.
You know, that's something I should bring up to him.
Yeah.
When was the last time? Well, because we've got our own furnace. We don't have access to it, but it's like each floor has its own utilities and whatnot. So, we pay our own gas bill, et cetera, et cetera. So it would really behoove us if we can get an efficiency, especially in this town where shit's crazy expensive.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool deal. Well,
Yeah.
it's good to see you.
Likewise.
It is time to depart the hanging of the ops, but we will be back on Friday, the 28th.
I will attempt to make it this week.